G'day, my name is David and I love my gardening, in particular my veggie patch. Today I wanted to talk about how do you know when your compost that you're making, your homegrown compost, how to know whether it's wet enough. You can have it too wet and you get anaerobic breakdown where you get really smelly compost, there's no oxygen in there. And then the other extreme you can have is if it gets too dry, if there's not enough moisture in there, the breaking down process of organic matter slows down. So how do you know when it's too dry? Well, there's a few indicators I use. I use firstly these temperature probes. You can buy them on eBay or Amazon. They are over 1 metre long, and they're for composting. And what I do is I look in here and I can see that this one says it's active, so there's decomposition going on in here. So while it's active, I know that the compost heap is doing what it's supposed to be doing. This heap here, it is it's starting to slow down. When it gets into that steady area is when I get concerned. I wonder whether it's whether it's actually finished composting, and I know that these haven't because these two bins haven't been running long enough. But this third bin, when I looked at my little temperature probe this morning, it was in the cool area. Again, I know it hasn't been composting long enough to break down all the organic matter. So straight away, I surmised that it was dry. And the temperature probe is very accurate. This is very, very dry compost. The other way you can tell is actually when you use a fork, which I got a fork. It's a very wide Trojan fork, which is perfect. It's got lots of tines on it, close together, for picking up compost. And one of the ways that I can tell it's too dry is when I go to pick up a fork full of compost, the compost just falls straight through it, through the tines. And it shouldn't. If it's moist, you should end up with a nice big clump on those forks there that doesn't fall through. The organic matter will hold it together. So I now have to turn this bin over. I use pallets, my recycled plastic pallets. I use these to form my composting bins. I have a process where all my organic matter goes into the first bin, and when I fill it up, I turn it over to oxygenate the compost. I turn it over again a second, third, and when it gets to the final bin, that's the final turn before it goes out into the garden. But here in Melbourne, the last few weeks, we've had 34, 36, 38 degree days, and the poor compost is dried out. When it's dried out like that, you won't be getting the decomposition and the breaking down of the organic matter that you need. So my two things I use to determine and work out whether my compost is wet or not: my thermometer when things slow down, and my fork when the organic matter just falls through it, and it shouldn't. As I turn this over, I throw in half a dozen forks of the compost, and then I have beside me a watering can, and as I put it down, I give it a good soak. Don't need to go too crazy, just a couple of litres on this much compost, and then I fork in some more compost on top. The other thing I'm doing, just to spice this up as I'm going along, is I'm actually adding in old used coffee grounds from our coffee ladies. I drop off my buckets to their van and I get about 60 kilos of coffee granules. Coffee granules are great because there's a lot of air and gap in between these things. As you might be able to see there in one of these, you get mold or fungus grows very readily on coffee. They do use all coffee grounds for growing mushrooms, commercial mushrooms that you eat, So it's a good medium for doing that, but it very readily gets spores and things on it, and it starts to grow fungi, which is fantastic in your compost to get organic stuff happening, get the breakdown process. Fungi break things down to their raw materials. So coffee grounds is an excellent way of making a nice warm compost and spiking things along and building a brilliant compost for your veggie patch. And as you can see, here are the results of doing your own organic compost at home. Chalk and cheese, don't buy compost from your local garden centre. 9 times out of 10 it's just crap. If you can, find the space, make your own compost. You won't regret it. And the proof is in the pudding, as they say. Just get a load of all of this as a result of homemade compost. Hope that video helps. If you ever have any other questions about composting, I love my composting because of the results it produces. Ask a question, please comment and share and like. Thanks for watching.